Welcome back to the channel.
Tonight is Halloween and we are about to get spooky.
Yeah, we're going on a Charleston ghost tour.
So come get spooky with us.
Let's go. Tonight's tour is the Bulldog tour in Charleston. Got a pretty cool sign here. This is going to be our first tour in Charleston, so it'll be interesting to see what it's like. So here's some of their other tours. They do a Charleston, Yorktown, Magnolia Cemetery. That's what we're going on tonight, the VIP ghost tour. They even do some food ones like a cocktail tour and a savor the flavors tour.
In case you guys are wondering, it looks like it's almost a full moon tonight, if not a complete full moon. Perfect for the spookies. You excited?
Always. I'm excited to see where they take us.
What are you hoping to get out of this tour?
I don't know. I don't even know where they're taking us. So how would I know what we're going to get out of it, man?
All right. Straight from Gary's mouth.
Heading to the first stop. This is fun. This guy books it. We've actually caught up to another tour group.
I want to tell you guys that the largest earthquake ever recorded was a 7.5. The earthquake I'm talking about was a 7.3. Okay? It lasted for 40 seconds. There is no natural occurring stone underneath us right now. They said for that 45 seconds that we had that earthquake, the streets looked like waves because there was no natural occurring rock bed underneath us. I want to tell you right now, you are standing on North America's largest fault line. It's called the Woodstock Fault Line. It goes from Woodstock, New York, all the way to the Caribbean. A lot of people think that San Andreas is the biggest. It's not. It's just the most active. I want to tell you 2007, in 2007 was the last major earthquake we had on this fault line. It happened in Alexandria, Virginia. It damaged the Washington Monument. Do you guys remember that? Okay, so in saying that, guys, this is the beginning of St. Philip's. I will tell you that St. Philip's has two signers of the Declaration of Independence, one signer of the Constitution, Miss Rhett from Gone with the Wind, and John C. Calhoun, the only vice president that served under two different presidents and the only vice president to resign from office. All of those people are buried in the cemetery in the graveyard there. I also want to tell you that John C. Calhoun and Mr. Jackson hated each other so much that they had fistfights in the White House. 4 of them, actually. When Mr. Jackson came here because his mother served as a nurse here in the city of Charleston during the American Revolution. In saying that, guys, I want to draw your attention to that side, to the actual graveyard now, guys. I want to tell you some of the places we stop, a lot of them I actually have pictures. This is one of those places. So, guys, I want to tell you, I know the exact reason why you guys are here tonight, and it's not for a tour. It's because of hearsay. And I say that because a man who snuck into that very graveyard took a picture of a ghost. A little organization called National Geographic picked up that picture, put it on the front of their magazine, and listed Charleston as one of the most haunted places in America. We're talking the 90s, guys. So, in saying that, I'm now going to tell you that story, and I do have that very picture that he took. So what happened in the late 90s, June 10th, the early 90s, June 10th was the day a man took it upon himself to take a picture of every graveyard and cemetery in the city of Charleston. He got to St. Philip's right as it was turning dusk. They had already locked the gates. So what does he do? He sneaks around the side, finds a hole in the fence, and goes inside. So when he's inside, he starts taking pictures, and then he finds something very strange. He took a picture of it. He couldn't believe his eyes. Guys, at that time, for those youngins in the group, do you guys know what Kodak is? So I want to tell you guys, at that time, you could send your film and you could send your camera to Kodak in Rochester, New York. They would try to debunk everything. Make sure there was nothing wrong with your camera and make sure there was nothing wrong with your film. So he sent it. There was nothing wrong with this film, nothing wrong with this camera. So what does he do? He releases that very picture to the Associated Press, which sends it throughout the United States. Then, like I said, we had National Geographic, which picked it up. After they picked it up, they sent it out, listing Charleston as one of the most haunted places. Now I'm going to tell you the name of that ghost is Miss Sue Howard Hardy. Miss Sue Howard Hardy actually was a ghost, is a ghost now, but I want to tell you that the Anglican Church, which is basically the Church of England, they do not believe in ghosts, guys. They've done a lot of things to try to debunk the said ghost story in their cemetery. Not only did they put up a light, they put up a sign that says the only ghost at St. Philip's is the Holy Ghost. And also on top of that, guys, what else did they do? They moved her tombstone inside of the church and replaced it with another one. Sue Howard Hardy and her husband moved here in the early 1700s. When they came here, guys, Sue wanted nothing more than to have a baby. That was her goal in life, was to bear children and to live out being a stay-at-home mom. Obviously, she didn't understand what a stay-at-home mom was because women didn't work at that time. That's the thing. All right, so she tried and tried, and they never had a baby. And eventually, she did get pregnant. She went to about her 8th month, and having a very, very bad pregnancy. She did lose her baby. Guys, when she had her baby, she started to hemorrhage. When she started to hemorrhage, the doctor told her she wasn't going to survive, so she lost enough blood to go into a coma. Well, at this time, guys, Gaston, her husband, actually went to the priest and asked the priest where he should bury the baby. Well, the priest at that time said the baby was never baptized, so therefore it could not be put in the churchyard or the graveyard. This devastated Gaston, so he buries his baby in the cemetery. The neighbor's graveyard is what we call this. So I want to tell you that Sue actually did pass away. She did come to for about 20 minutes before she passed away, begging to have her child, her son, buried with her. Gaston already knew that this wasn't possible, so what does he do? In the dead of night, he digs up his child, buries it with his wife, reburies her, and takes that to his deathbed, where he confesses to his priest what he had done. Guys, I want to tell you that that baby died on June 10th. See the correlation here? June 10th, June 10th. Guys, today, people will come and they will literally be 15 people deep in the road on June 10th, either wanting to see the ghost or hear the baby cry. Lots of people have said that they've heard the baby cry. So guys, now what I'm going to do is I'm going to show you that very picture. I'm going to leave it up to you. A lot of people say that it's either her sitting at her grave waiting for her baby or it's her holding her baby. And I will completely leave that up to you. There were 2 of these in the city. This is where we held our black powder, hence the name, the Powder Magazine. Where the old city jail is, if any of you guys are planning to take a tour of the old city jail, guys, there used to be a magazine there. Unfortunately, normally I'm in the scary place by the time that goes off, so.
So this up here is the oldest brick building in the area. Check it out. Used to be a judge's house. There's another side of the brick building.
This very spot right here holds 2 titles on my tour. One. In this, this is a parking lot.
4,000 bodies.
Not only does it go in front of the bank, it goes all the way across the street to where the other sidewalk is, all the way in front of the church. Guys, over, I would say 8,000 to 9,000 bodies buried underneath us right now. Guys, at the time, a potter's field is where we would bury people who were not Christian or members of the church. They are not baptized. Only baptized people can be buried in a churchyard. So in saying that, guys, people were given the opportunity to come here. Anybody of any faith was allowed to come here. They just couldn't be buried in a churchyard.
Yeah, you're going into a graveyard.
Circular church graveyard. Graveyard is the oldest grave site in our city. The oldest tomb goes back to 1695. This building is actually the 4th church built on this site. The very first one was a white meeting house. This is where Meeting Street gets its name. It's where the meeting houses were. I also want to tell you that this building itself, the rector believed that the devil hid in corners, so the sanctuary is in a complete circle. Guys, I want to point out this I guess it's a carving. This would be one of the very first carvings ever of an individual who wanted their portrait put on their tombstone. He was one of the rectors of the church here, and his tombstone is in Latin. But this would be one of the very first ones. We were very, very interested with the afterlife. Guys, we're still very interested in the afterlife. We just don't talk about it. It's very taboo here in America. All these are very, very important.
So this is the graveyard that you stop at?
And the Victorians were not accustomed to people dying, so they were very worried about the afterlife.
The flashes
Okay,
are
guys,
people.
ready?
Don't have low light cameras.
Right here, there are 3 people buried under it. It is the Simmons family plot. The husband died first. When her son died, she
Oldest
put a
grave
cedar
in here.
plank in between, to not disturb her husband, she put a cedar plank in between her husband and her son. When she also passed away, she put another cedar plank down, had her body put on top. Guys, I want to tell you that this style of tomb is not something that is very familiar here in North America. You can find it in South America, in the Middle East. We don't know where she got this idea from, but it's not something that is very common here in North America. The reason why they're close together, a place of honor was to be buried beside the church. When the church got bigger or the building tore down, what do? We just built over top of them and moved their tombstones. Like I told you guys, it's a reoccurring theme here in Charleston. These are all people who would have been founding family members. And people who held high esteem of the church, because the best place to be buried is right beside the church. We don't move the bodies, we just build the building on top of them. Any questions? I also want to tell you guys, during the Civil War, 587 days of bombardment on Union soldiers here on our city. Guys, there were a lot of people who were injured. A lot of people had to have surgery. There wasn't enough hospitals. So what did? We brought them to the cemetery, and any grave that had a flat surface we used as a surgical area. If you look around, there are flat surfaces all over the cemetery, and the majority of them were used as an operating table. Is there any questions? Guys, I can tell you that there are about 5 ghosts that reside in this cemetery. One is the Gray Man. He can be seen up in the belfry. He's also seen back there in the back part near the mausoleum. Also, Mr. Slaughter, Dr. Slaughter, actually, his boys, 3 of them, died 10 days apart from each other from yellow fever. One was 8, one was 6, and one was 4. Mr. Slaughter was one of those doctors that went in the home, and he thought that he brought that disease to his family. His wife and his other son all passed away within a year. Mr. Slaughter did take his life because he was grief-stricken, because he thought that he brought that to his family. They really didn't understand that disease at that time. Sometimes people come into the cemetery and they sit on the boy's grave because it's a flat surface. It sort of looks like a bench. People have been pushed off of the bench. People have had rocks thrown at them, and there were people who were laughing and joking right beside, and they got shoved. So Mr. Slaughter is seen walking around his children's area. Also, like I said, he throws rocks and he pushes people. So, is there any questions? Okay. This is where the term pushing up daisies comes from. Daisies are a wild flower that grow naturally, so we wouldn't pick them. We would let them grow, and this is where pushing up daisies come from, because there would be gardens on top of your graves. All right?
Here's a shot of that outside of that graveyard. Right next to this church. Right across the street from the black door.
Where you're not so far away. All right, guys. A couple things right here. First and foremost, I want to point out this beautiful pink building. This is the Hills House Hotel, guys. I want to tell you this hotel is known for being very, very haunted. Funny thing about this hotel is, if you see a ghost, you're only going to see it from the waist up or the waist down. The reason for this is 1861, we had a horrible fire. It devastated 75% of our city. Robert E. Lee was actually in this very building. He came out on the balcony, told all of his men that we're here, guys, because I want to tell you that their tour used to be known as the city's largest bordello. So he was here for a purpose. This is the place of negotiated affection, if you know what I mean. Okay, you just looked at me like I was crazy. Anyway, so Robert E. Lee comes outside, tells all of his men to get pillowcases, blankets, anything that they could wet down and put over the windowsills to stop the building from burning. I want to tell you, he did save the building. 1960s. The building does fall in on itself. Why? Termites. Guys, I want to tell you that the reason why I say you're only going to see a half of a ghost either way is because floors have changed how tall they are from that time in the 1800s to now. So where we see a floor is not where their floor used to be. If it's a residual ghost, it's going to keep walking on the same floor that it walked on when it was alive. Seeing how the floor is different, you can't see through the floor, so you're only going to see half of a ghost. Okay? Guys, I want to welcome you to Chalmers Street. Chalmers Street, at the time when it was huge, used to be known as the Lawless Street. Guys, we used to love pirates. We hated what pirates did. We loved when the pirates would come and they would spend money in our city. So we gave them an area where they could do whatever they wanted. It was known as the Lawless Street. If they wanted to kill people, they could. If they wanted to stab people, they could. If they wanted to maim somebody, they could. I can tell you there was a lot of bordellos and brothels on this city. They were known as punch houses. The oldest dwelling in our city is actually known as the Pink House. I have a picture of it. The Pink House is actually, ironically enough today, is a law office.
So this is taken out of the bows of
We
boats.
have a lot of ghosts, and actually most of the pictures I have of ghosts are actually on the street that were taken by my guests.
Another park with a monolith in the middle. So this is supposed to be one of the haunted streets in Charleston. See all the camera flashes? Alright, we got another nice little walk. 2 blocks to the dungeon.
Questions so far?
We've been to the dungeon once before, so make sure you guys check out that video. We went in the daylight hours.
There's 2 Tiffany stained glass windows in that bad boy. Whoop-de-doo. In the next place. So that's the Hat Man across the street. He's a 200-year-old marketing campaign made of hats. That's nice. We have officially made it back to the Provost House and Dungeon. Alright, we're heading into the dungeon. Yeah. Oh, this is where the store goes too.
The pressure just changed. Alright guys, don't go any further than that. Come back this way just a little bit, please. That way I can explain everything without screaming. Each one of the major players that landed in America had a walled city. We had St. Augustine, which is the Spanish. We had Charleston, which was the English. And of course, Quebec is the French. A lot of people think that New York was a walled city for protection. It wasn't. It was to actually stop the water. First and foremost, we have Fort Sumter, which is right over there. Fort Sumter is where the very first battle of the Civil War happened. Guys, I want to tell you, the bloodiest war in American history started with a bloodless battle. No one died at Fort Sumter, believe it or not. The only thing that did die was a goat. Also, P.G. Beauregard, who gave the orders for the cadets at the Citadel to start bombarding Fort Sumter. Guys, his best friend was the #1 at Fort Sumter. He begged him 5 times to leave the fort because he had to do what he had to do because he had already been given orders. So the last time, what does he do? He sends cigars and liquor trying to coerce his friend off of the island. And guys, that didn't work either. So when the cadets basically destroyed everything on the island, P.G. Beauregard sends out a ship to pick up all of the soldiers on Fort Sumter. I want to tell you guys that he said that they fought with chivalry, and that they were to be treated with utmost respect. So what happens is, when that ship gets there, he has about 30 to 35 soldiers who then start giving them gun salutes as people are getting onto the ship. Guys, unfortunately, one of those guns does explode, killing one of the men that was boarding the ship, causing the very first casualty of the Civil War. And it wasn't even during the battle, guys. It happened after. So there's that. I want to talk about a little area right here where that blinking light is, guys. That is what is known as Castle Pinckney. Castle Pinckney is an old castle where we used to keep our revolutionary POWs. There was a man who wrote a book about his childhood at Castle Pinckney. I want to tell you that the book doesn't really talk about ghosts at all. But I can tell you, if you're ever walking at this park right before dusk, sometimes you'll see a red flickering light, as in a fire over there. The reason why the fire is over there, guys, is because his gardener that lived there spontaneously combusted. So he just randomly caught fire, randomly. We don't know why. But anyways, every once in a while, you can see his ghost over at Castle Pinckney. Also, there is a sand barge right over here. It has a white cross on it, guys. The reason why the white cross is there is to remind us of all the people who have lost their lives at sea. But guys, little do a lot of people who come here know, well, that first of all, that's what it's for, but that's also where we used to tie our pirates at the ankles on the sandbar. We used to let the water come up and drown them, and then we left their bodies there to warn other pirates not to be coming and doing piratey things. So all of these places have a tendency to be a little haunted. I can tell you that there is a story about another woman who made history here in Charleston, and her name was Lavinia Fisher, guys. Now, this is one of my favorite stories, and she actually lived here. She did die, and she was killed. She was killed because she was one of the very first women serial killers in America. She's from right here in Charleston. She owned an inn about 6 miles from here called the 6 Mile Inn. Isn't that ironic? Guys, she is buried at that place that I told you about, that large field that the cadets of the Citadel now march on. She's buried there, and she was hung in that very park that we walked through. Remember I told you, pay attention to that knoll? Guys, that's where she was hung. But she wasn't hung in a normal way. She actually hung herself. And this is the story of Lavinia Fisher. Lavinia, who was known for being a very, very beautiful woman, Lavinia would come to the taverns of Charleston, and she would try to rustle up people to come to her inn. Because those people would be leaving soon, so on their way out, she would stop, she would give them a place to sleep, and she would give them a nice warm dinner. Well, because it was easy for her to coerce people because she was so pretty, there was a man named Mr. Peebles. Mr. Peebles was from Maryland. Mr. Peebles came, he was at a tavern, he ran into Lavinia. Good thing or bad thing, either way, he ran into her. Lavinia did coerce him into coming back to her inn, where she fed him a beautiful dinner, gave him great conversation, and then she started asking questions that we would consider a red flag, like, who knows you're here? What did you bring with you? What type of business do you do? Those sort of things. You know, Mr. Peebles wasn't an ignorant man, and he knew something was up. So, after dinner, Lavinia and John, her husband, take Mr. Peebles and the rest of their guests into the drawing room, where they serve everyone tea. Well, Mr. Peebles got tea from a different teapot, guys, and he thought this was weird. But I want to tell you, Mr. Peebles, his entire life hated tea. He absolutely hated tea. So while he's sitting there, everybody else starts going to bed, and he's still up talking to John. They're conversating it up. And as John and Lavinia turn around, Mr. Peebles dumps his tea out in the plant beside him. Lavinia notices that his teacup is empty, so she fills it again. Well, eventually Mr. Peebles got tired of her filling up his teacup, so what does he do? He asks to go to his bedroom. So she takes him up to his bedroom. It's a nice bedroom. It looks like a cozy bed. Some random, weird, like 3 different rugs at the foot of his bed. He's like, this is not right. So he waits for Lavinia to leave, and he decides he's not sleeping in the bed. He's going to sleep in the chair across the room. So he sleeps in there around 2 o'clock that night. He hears a lot of rustling and commotion underneath his bed. Next thing you know, his bed falls through the floor, exposing spikes. He looks over, seeing the spikes, and there's John Fisher with a knife. So guys, I want to tell you that if the tea that he was supposed to drink, which was oleander tea, I don't know if you guys know what oleander tea is. It's a very poisonous plant. It can be dried up and turned into tea very easily. What happens is, first and foremost, you go into paralysis. Then you go into a coma, and while you're in a coma, you start bleeding from every orifice. So if the oleander tea didn't kill you, and the spikes didn't kill you, John was going to get you with a knife. Right? Mr. Peebles sees John. He runs down the hallway, jumps out of the window, immediately goes to the authorities. Where he goes to the authorities, and he tells them exactly what happened. They didn't believe this because Lavinia was a beautiful woman, and she wouldn't do something that crazy. Little did they know, When they came and they searched the 6 Mile Inn, they found exactly what Mr. People said. So the authorities took Lavinia and her husband and their 5 cohorts to the old city jail. That same place where the old magazine that exploded is, guys. So they're at the old city jail. John goes in and out of his jail cell because he is worried about his soul. He knows that highway robbery and murder is a death sentence. Highway robbery itself was a death sentence. He knew he was going to die, so he asked to see a priest. He asked to confess. He went in and out trying to make sure that his soul was right because he knew he was going to die. Lavinia did not care. Period. Did not care. One day, John left and never came back. That same day, Lavinia went in front of the judge, where she starts yelling and screaming about how the judge doesn't have a right to kill her. She is property of her husband, and only her husband can say whether or not she dies. Which is very true, guys. At that time, women were property of their husbands. But I want to tell you that Lavinia went on, and eventually the judge had to use the bathroom, so he stood up. He said, Lavinia, that's enough. I killed your husband today, and you'll die tomorrow. So Lavinia, thinking she was smarter than the average bear, asked for her wedding dress. Why do you think she would ask for a wedding dress, guys?
Get married.
Hoping some poor sap on the way to the gallows would say they would marry her and stop her from being killed. Needless to say, they couldn't find her wedding dress. So what did they do? That very Michael's church, right across the street, gave them a white choir robe. She gets up on the gallows. She puts the noose around her own neck. She looks out in the crowd and says, does anybody have a message for hell? I'm about to dine there. She takes one step, tripping over that robe, falling off of the gallows, hanging herself. And that is the end of Lavinia Fisher. Make sure your toes are above the line.
Above the line. Above which line? Oh, I can hear it. Yeah.
Yeah, right there.
Yeah. Yeah, it's like,
You move back just a little bit, you'll hear it better.
yeah, the sound is like bouncing off of something and then coming back to you. Yeah, that's cool. I mean, you should definitely come up here and listen to it. You can hear your own voice.
Yeah, it's like you're in something.
Yeah. You can't hear, it's like you're in a sound booth.
Yes.
Yeah, it's like if you're in a sound booth and like the acoustics.
Okay, well, don't explain it too much. That way other people can experience it.
Well, if you're afraid, don't
You
be
definitely
afraid.
have
And of course, we have this
So there's the pineapple fountain at night.
rendition of a pineapple. I want to tell you the very first sculpture of pineapples that actually did anything like that.
So this is Philadelphia Alleyway. Apparently this is where you'd have a duel back in the day. And you'd go 10 paces and then wait for the petitioner to shoot. Nice, he's going.
10 paces, right? 10 paces are steps, right?
Yeah, but it'd be 10 paces, I think, from the middle and then outside. So you'd go to like a middle spot and then you'd go 10 paces, and then I would go 10 paces. So what'd you think of the tour?
It was interesting. It was not spooky. So if you're worried about getting like too spooked, honestly, I'm a big baby when it comes to stuff like this, and I'm fine. I was fine the whole tour. But I like learning about like the different history of places, so that's kind of my takeaway, is just learning about like the history of buildings and like what happened there. And then it's fun to just hear ghost stories and folklore and that kind of stuff. So it was fun. What did you think?
I thought it was cool. One of the fascinating things, like Nacy said, is there's definitely a really big history component to this, which is really fun and fascinating to learn. Something I found interesting, though, is that it's always the woman's fault. Like, even with the killer from the hotel, the 6 Mile Hotel or whatever, it was like, oh, the woman lures them in. But the guy was waiting down there to kill them. So it's not like he was, like, totally free
Innocent,
of
yeah.
anything. And then he talked about, I didn't film this one, though, he talked about in this alleyway, the whistling doctor ends up, I think he killed the person. Right, he was challenged because the guy's wife was saying that he was too inappropriate. It's like, it's always the woman. Like, I'm sure the guys didn't have any beef or anything. It's always the woman that like brought upon this duel, and then the dudes decide to have the duel, not the women. So it's always interesting. I loved it though. It was a fun experience and definitely something you should consider if you're here in Charleston. All right, that concludes our trip to Charleston.
Yeah, we made it. It honestly was the best travel day I've had in a long time.
Yeah, good experience. Easy travel day, which was kind of nice for a change. We are at the hotel we stayed at before. Check out that review in the top right-hand corner.
Yeah. We also have t-shirts now. So if you guys want to check out some of the t-shirts that Gary's made, definitely look for that link. It should be in the show notes below. And yeah, we got dinner on the plane, which was tasty. I did not mind it at all. It was perfect for me. Weird thing was that we both got the same meal, but he got a salad and I got fruit. Like I don't really know why that is, but nonetheless, it was fun.
Yeah, today we're heading out to do a ghost tour, so make sure to check out that video in the upper right-hand corner.
Yeah, if you guys want to see us get spooky.
Yeah, if you like this video, hit that thumbs up.
Make sure you hit that subscribe button.
And ring that notification bell so you get notified of at least 3 videos a week.
And we'll come and get you guys for the next one.
Ain't that the truth, baby Ruth?